My name is Michael Carter, and for most of my life, I've been just another face in the crowd. Denver, Colorado had been my home for 38 years, and in many ways, it defined me. A city known for its towering peaks and bustling downtown. It provided a sense of stability that mirrored the structured simplicity of my own life. I wasn't extraordinary by any means, just a man with a steady job, a family, and a routine that repeated itself like clockwork. Emma, my wife, was the kind of woman whose presence brought warmth to any room she entered. She had an unshakable kindness, a way of smoothing over life's rough edges with a gentle word or a soft touch. Our children, Ethan and Lily, were my pride and joy. Ethan, at 12, had already inherited his mother's calm and my knack for puzzles, while 8-year-old Lily radiated a lightness that could dissolve any worries I carried home after a long day. I worked as a software engineer, a career that had begun with dreams of innovation, but had settled into the monotony of debugging code and solving predictable problems. It wasn't glamorous, but it was reliable. I had carved out a life that was safe, structured, and, in its way, satisfying. My days were filled with schedules, school drop-offs, project deadlines, and family dinners where Emma insisted we leave our phones at the door. In hindsight, I now see how easily I had mistaken that sense of security for fulfillment. Life felt manageable, and for a time, that was enough. But beneath the surface, there was a restlessness I couldn't quite name, a sense that something essential was missing. It was a rainy afternoon in late autumn when the cracks in my ordinary world began to show. The day had started like any other, with the morning rush of packing lunches, checking emails, and navigating the steady stream of cars along Interstate 25. By the time evening rolled around, I was drained. The rain had begun as I left the office, a light drizzle that streaked my windshield and mirrored the weariness settling over me. As I drove, my mind wandered to the endless loop of tasks waiting for me. Dinner, helping Lily with her math homework, prepping Ethan for his soccer game. I had fallen into a rhythm so predictable that even my thoughts ran on autopilot. The rain picked up, and the hum of my car's tires against the wet road became a kind of white noise, lulling me into a false sense of calm. Then, in an instant, everything changed. The squeal of tires shattered the silence, a sharp, metallic sound that tore through the rain's steady rhythm. My hands tightened around the steering wheel as I caught sight of a car swerving into my lane. Time seemed to warp. The world around me slowed as the car's headlights bore down on me, a blinding halo that consumed everything else. I felt the sickening jolt of impact, the force throwing me forward against the seatbelt, the sharp crack of glass, and metal folding in on itself. The next moments were a blur of chaos, shards of light and sound crashing together in a cacophony that overwhelmed my senses. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, everything went quiet. In that silence, I felt myself slipping away as though the weight of my body was being lifted piece by piece. The cold, wet air of the car gave way to a warmth I couldn't explain, and the darkness behind my closed eyes began to glow, faintly at first, then brighter. It was then that I realized I wasn't in the car anymore. Thank you for being here and sharing in this journey. If this story has touched you so far, consider becoming part of our growing community by subscribing to the channel and leaving a like. It's through your support that we can continue to explore these extraordinary stories together. The world I knew was gone. The moments after the crash felt like falling into a void. At first, there was darkness, a heavy, all-encompassing blackness that pressed against me. It wasn't just the absence of light. It was the absence of everything. There was no sound, no sensation, only a stillness so profound that it felt like the universe had been put on pause. But then, something shifted. A faint hum began to ripple through the darkness, subtle at first, like the soft vibration of distant music. It grew stronger, surrounding me with a warmth that was neither physical nor entirely emotional. It was something more, something I didn't have words to describe. I tried to move, but my body felt weightless, as though it wasn't even there. And then came the light. At first, it was just a pinprick in the distance, barely visible against the void. But it began to grow, expanding with an intensity that drew me toward it. I wasn't walking or running. I was simply moving, propelled by an unseen force. The light wasn't blinding. It was inviting, soft and golden, wrapping around me like the embrace of a long-lost friend. I could feel a strange duality within me, an awareness of where I had been and the realization that I was no longer there. Images of the crash flickered in my mind. The rain streaking down the windshield, the headlights of the other car, the sickening crunch of impact. But they felt distant now, as if they belonged to someone else's story. The golden light grew brighter, enveloping everything around me. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, it stopped expanding. I was standing in a vast, open expanse, the boundaries of which I couldn't perceive. The ground beneath me was soft and luminous, glowing faintly with the same golden hue that filled the air. It wasn't like earth or grass. It felt otherworldly, yet solid enough to hold me. The air was thick with something unexplainable, a presence, a kind of energy that pulsed gently, almost in rhythm with my heartbeat. It wasn't oppressive or overwhelming. It was comforting, a reminder that I wasn't alone. I tried to speak, to call out, but no sound came from my lips. Yet strangely, I didn't feel panic. Instead, I felt calm, as though the questions that had always lingered in the back of my mind no longer mattered. Where am I? I thought, and as if in response, a voice answered, not aloud, but within me. You are here because you were meant to be. The words resonated through my entire being, vibrating in a way that felt deeply personal. It wasn't the kind of voice I was used to hearing. It was neither male nor female, neither old nor young. It was simply there, pure and full of meaning. As I stood there trying to process the enormity of what was happening, I became aware of movement in the distance. At first, it was faint, like shadows shifting on the edge of my vision. But as I focused, I could see them more clearly. Figures, human in shape, moving gracefully through the golden expanse. They weren't solid like me. Their forms were translucent, shimmering with an inner light that seemed to pulse gently, in harmony with the atmosphere. They moved without sound, gliding effortlessly as though gravity had no hold on them. One of the figures began to approach, emerging from the haze with a presence that was both familiar and otherworldly. My heart quickened, though not from fear. There was something about this figure, something that stirred a memory I couldn't quite place. As they came closer, the light around them seemed to intensify, casting soft rays that illuminated their face. It was a woman, her features both striking and serene. Her dark hair framed a face that radiated kindness and wisdom, and her eyes held a depth that seemed to reach into the very core of who I was. I didn't recognize her immediately, but the moment our eyes met, a wave of understanding washed over me. I knew her. This was someone I had only seen from afar, a figure whose life had been both celebrated and scrutinized by the world. It was Emma Carter, the woman who had stood as a beacon of grace and compassion in her time on Earth. Her voice broke through the stillness, gentle yet powerful. "Michael," she said, my name rolling off her tongue as if she had known it forever. I stood frozen, my mind racing to make sense of the impossible. How could she be here? How could I be here? Her gaze softened, and she stepped closer, the warmth of her presence wrapping around me like a blanket. "You are not here by accident," she said, her words carrying a weight that I could feel deep within my soul. The golden light enveloping me seemed to pulse gently, almost as if it were alive, matching the steady rhythm of my own heartbeat. Emma Carter stood before me, her presence as real as the ground beneath my feet, yet there was an ethereal quality to her, something otherworldly that made her seem both tangible and transcendent. Her words echoed in my mind. "You are not here by accident." I wanted to respond, to ask the dozens of questions racing through my mind, but I found myself mute. My thoughts felt scattered, overwhelmed by the impossible reality before me. How could I be speaking to Emma Carter, a woman who had left this world years ago? And how could I even be here, wherever here was? "It's okay," she said, her voice breaking through the chaos of my thoughts. Take a moment. Let yourself feel. Her tone wasn't commanding. It was patient, as though she understood the storm brewing inside me. Slowly, I closed my eyes and inhaled deeply, expecting the familiar scent of rain-soaked asphalt or the sterile smell of a hospital room. Instead, the air here carried something indescribable, a fragrance that was at once sweet and crisp, like the first bloom of spring mixed with the freshness of mountain air. When I opened my eyes, she was still there, her kind gaze unwavering. "You've crossed a threshold, Michael," she said, her words calm, yet full of gravity. "But this is not the end. It's a beginning. A beginning of what?" The words tumbled out of me, shaky but audible. My voice sounded foreign, as though it didn't belong to me. Her smile was gentle. "That's for you to discover." She gestured for me to walk with her, and without hesitation, I followed. The ground beneath us seemed to ripple faintly with each step, like the surface of a still pond disturbed by the softest breeze. The figures I had seen earlier moved gracefully in the distance, their forms shimmering as they passed. They didn't look at me or acknowledge my presence, yet I felt no sense of exclusion, only a profound peace, as if this place held space for everyone and everything. As we walked, the golden light around us began to shift. Subtle hues of lavender and rose blended into the glow, creating an atmosphere that felt like the cusp of dawn. It was beautiful, but there was something else, a presence, a weight in the air that wasn't oppressive but deeply sacred. "What is this place?" I asked, my voice steadier now. Emma turned to me, her expression thoughtful. "It's a reflection," she said, "of you, of your journey, of what's still to come. This isn't a place you can define in earthly terms. It's a space between." Her words sent a shiver through me, not of fear, but of awe. A space between. The phrase lingered in my mind, resonating in a way I couldn't fully grasp. "Why am I here?" I asked, my voice quieter this time. She stopped walking, turning to face me fully. Her eyes, deep and filled with an almost maternal warmth, searched mine. "You were brought here because there's something you need to see, something you need to understand before you can return." "Return?" I echoed, the word catching in my throat. "To where? To what?" Her expression softened, and she reached out, placing her hand over her heart. "To your life," she said. "But first, you need to remember why you're living it." Her words struck something deep within me, an ache I hadn't realized I was carrying. I felt exposed, as though she could see every corner of my soul, the parts one kept hidden even from myself. She began to walk again, and though my legs felt heavy, I followed. The landscape around us shifted subtly as we moved, the light growing warmer, almost amber in tone. The ground beneath us, once soft and unyielding, began to feel more textured, like sand warmed by the sun. In the distance, I noticed something unusual, a doorway. It wasn't attached to a wall or a structure. It stood alone, framed by the golden light that surrounded everything. As we approached, the details of the doorway became clearer. It was intricately carved, its surface covered in symbols and patterns that seemed to shift and move when I tried to focus on them. "This is the threshold," Emma said, her voice low, reverent. "What's on the other side?" I asked, unable to hide the tremor in my voice. Understanding, she replied simply. I hesitated, my feet rooted to the ground. The doorway seemed to pulse faintly, its glow inviting yet daunting. I turned to Emma, searching her face for reassurance. "You don't have to do this alone," she said, stepping closer. "But the choice is yours." I looked back at the doorway, its light almost blinding now. My chest tightened as fear and curiosity warred within me. The air around us seemed to hum, vibrating with an energy that was both foreign and familiar. Taking a deep breath, I stepped forward. As I stepped through the doorway, the world around me shifted once again. The golden hues that had enveloped everything faded into a radiant white light, so pure and bright that it seemed to stretch infinitely in all directions. I shielded my eyes instinctively, but the light wasn't harsh. It was soothing, like the first rays of sunlight after a long, cold night. The air carried a stillness that wasn't silence, but a deep, resonant peace. It felt alive, vibrating with a frequency I couldn't hear but could feel, as though every atom around me pulsed with the same sacred energy. My breath caught in my throat as I took in my surroundings. Before me stood a vast expanse, unlike anything I had ever imagined. It wasn't a place I could describe in earthly terms. There was no horizon, no sky, no ground as I understood it. Instead, everything seemed interconnected, flowing together in perfect harmony. Streams of light wove through the space, carrying colors I had never seen before, hues so vivid they seemed to sing with life. And then I saw them. Figures began to emerge from the light, their forms indistinct yet unmistakably human. They weren't walking or floating. They were simply present, appearing with a fluid grace that defied explanation. Each figure radiated a soft glow, their presence warm and inviting. One of the figures stepped closer, and as they did, I felt a wave of emotion wash over me. Love, pure and unfiltered, the kind of love that transcends words and actions. It was overwhelming in its intensity, yet it didn't weigh me down. Instead, it lifted me, filling the empty spaces within me that I hadn't even realized were there. The figure became clearer as they approached, their features distinct yet timeless. Their eyes met mine, and in that instant, I felt completely seen. Every flaw, every triumph, every hidden piece of who I was laid bare. Yet there was no judgment, only acceptance. "You have questions," the figure said, their voice resonating within me. It wasn't spoken aloud, yet it was unmistakable, filling my mind with clarity. "I do," I managed to say, my voice trembling. "What is this place? Why am I here?" The figure smiled gently. "You are here to remember," they said. "To remember who you are and why you were created. This is not a destination, but a passage, a glimpse into the truth that has always been within you." Their words settled over me like a warm embrace. I tried to comprehend their meaning, but it was as if the answers they spoke of weren't meant to be understood intellectually. They were meant to be felt, experienced. The figure raised a hand, and as they did, the light around us shifted. Scenes began to unfold, suspended in the air like fragments of a dream. I saw moments from my life, some recent, others buried deep in my memory. There was the day I married Emma, the birth of Ethan and Lily, the quiet evenings spent working late while my family waited for me at home. But I also saw the cracks in the life I had built, the moments of frustration, the missed opportunities to connect, the times I had chosen comfort over courage. Each scene carried a weight, a lesson that seemed to whisper directly to my soul. "You've lived a good life," the figure said, their tone neither condemning nor indulgent. "But you've forgotten the purpose behind it. Love is the foundation, the thread that weaves everything together. Without it, even the greatest accomplishments are hollow." The word struck me with a force I hadn't expected. I felt tears welling in my eyes, not out of sadness, but out of a deep, profound understanding. "What do I do now?" I asked, my voice barely audible. The figure stepped closer, their gaze unwavering. "You choose," they said. "Every moment, every breath is an opportunity to choose love, to align yourself with the purpose you were created for. The choice is yours, Michael. It always has been." Their hand reached out, and though they didn't touch me, I felt a warmth spread through my chest, filling me with a lightness that seemed to dissolve every fear and doubt I carried. As the scenes faded and the light around us softened, I felt a pull, a gentle yet unmistakable tug, as though the world I had left behind was calling me back. I turned to the figure, my heart heavy with the thought of leaving this place, yet filled with a newfound clarity. "You are ready," the figure said, their voice soft but certain. As the gentle pull back to my life on earth grew stronger, the figure before me began to step aside, as if making way for something or someone else. The light around us dimmed ever so slightly, creating a quiet, sacred space. My breath caught in my throat as I noticed another presence emerging from the radiant glow, one that felt both awe-inspiring and deeply familiar. She walked with a grace that seemed almost otherworldly, her form bathed in soft light that shimmered as she moved. Her dark hair framed a face that radiated warmth and compassion, and her eyes held an indescribable depth, as though they carried the wisdom of lifetimes. In that instant, I knew who she was. It was Princess Diana. I stood frozen, my mind racing to reconcile the impossibility of what I was seeing. This was the woman whose life had captivated the world, a beacon of kindness and empathy, who had used her position to bring attention to those in need. Her presence here felt as profound as the place itself. "Michael," she said, her voice as soft and melodious as a song. Hearing my name spoken by her sent a shiver through me, not of fear, but of reverence. "You recognize me," she continued, her lips curving into a gentle smile. I nodded, still unable to form words. How could I not? Diana, the Princess of Wales, was a figure I had only known through stories and images, yet here she stood, radiant and unburdened by the weight of her earthly life. "You've traveled far to be here," she said, stepping closer. Her presence felt like sunlight breaking through clouds, warming everything it touched. "But your journey isn't finished. Why are you here?" I managed to ask, my voice trembling. Her expression softened, her gaze holding mine with an intensity that seemed to pierce through every barrier I'd ever built. "I am here because you need guidance," she said. "Your life, your choices, are at a crossroads, and I am here to help you see what lies ahead." Her words carried a weight that settled deep in my chest. I felt exposed under her gaze, as though she could see every part of me, my fears, my failures, and the moments I was most proud of. Yet there was no judgment in her eyes, only understanding. "Your life has been shaped by routine, by expectations," Diana continued. "You've done what was asked of you, but you've forgotten what it means to truly live, to love, to be present." Her words struck a chord within me, echoing the thoughts I'd tried to suppress for so long. "But how do I change that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I've tried to be a good husband, a good father, but I feel like it's not enough." "It's not about doing more," she said gently. "It's about being more, being present in every moment, being a vessel of love and light in a world that so desperately needs it." Her words resonated in a way I couldn't fully explain. It was as if she had taken the fragmented pieces of my life and placed them into a mosaic that finally made sense. Diana took a step closer, her presence filling me with a sense of peace I hadn't known I was missing. "There is so much more waiting for you, Michael," she said. "But first you must make a choice. Will you continue to live in the shadow of what is comfortable, or will you step into the light of your true purpose?" I hesitated, the weight of her question pressing against me. "How will I know what that purpose is?" She smiled, her eyes twinkling with a kindness that felt like a balm for my soul. "You already know," she said simply. "It's written in your heart, in the way you love, in the way you care for those around you. Trust in that, and the path will become clear." The air around us seemed to hum with a quiet energy, as if the entire space was holding its breath, waiting for my response. Diana's presence was steady, unwavering, as though she was prepared to stand beside me for as long as it took. And then, with a final step forward, she reached out her hand. "Take my hand, Michael," she said, her voice soft but resolute. "Let me show you what it means to choose love." The moment my hand met hers, a surge of warmth spread through me, an energy so profound it felt like my very soul was being cradled in light. Diana's touch wasn't physical in the way we experience on Earth. It was deeper, a connection that transcended the limitations of flesh and blood. I felt her spirit intertwining with mine, not as a stranger but as a guide, someone who had walked this path before and understood the questions I carried in my heart. The space around us began to change. The golden light that had surrounded us softened into a kaleidoscope of colors, swirling and shifting like the brushstrokes of a divine artist. Within those colors, images began to take form. scenes from my life, moments I had lived but never fully noticed. I saw Emma, my wife, her face illuminated by the morning sun as she laughed at something I'd said over breakfast. The sound of her laughter, so pure and unguarded, echoed through the vision and brought tears to my eyes. How many times had I taken that sound for granted? The image shifted, and I saw Ethan and Lily playing in the backyard, their joy as boundless as the sky above them. Lily was twirling in circles, her giggles harmonizing with the rustle of leaves, while Ethan chased her, his smile wide and unburdened. It was a simple moment, yet in this space, it felt monumental, as if the essence of life itself was captured in their laughter. "These are the treasures of your life," Diana's voice said, soft and melodic, yet it carried the weight of truth. "Moments like these are gifts, Michael. They are where love resides." The colors shifted again, and this time I saw myself. I was sitting at my desk late at night, the glow of my computer screen reflecting on my tired face. My shoulders were hunched, my expression weary. The vision lingered, forcing me to confront the choices I had made. The countless hours spent chasing deadlines while my family waited, the missed dinners, the stories I hadn't been there to hear. "You've been living as though time is infinite," Diana said, her words cutting through me like a blade. Not to wound, but to awaken. But it's not. Each moment is a chance to choose what matters most. And too often, we let those moments slip away. I felt a pang of regret, sharp and deep. "I thought I was doing what I was supposed to," I said, my voice trembling. "Providing for my family, working hard. Wasn't that enough?" "It is good to provide," she replied gently. "But provision is not just material. Love is the greatest provision you can offer. Your presence, your attention, your heart. These are the things that truly sustain those you love." The scene shifted once more, and this time, I was surrounded by strangers. Faces I didn't recognize appeared before me. People from all walks of life. Some looked joyful, others weary, but all of them carried a quiet vulnerability that I felt deeply. "Who are they?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "They're the ones waiting for your light," Diana said, her gaze steady. "Every soul has a purpose, Michael. Yours is to love, not just your family, but the world around you. There is so much pain, so much longing, and even the smallest act of love can create ripples beyond what you can imagine." Her words settled over me like a gentle rain, washing away the doubts and fears that had clung to me for so long. I felt a stirring within me, a call to action, a sense of purpose that was both daunting and exhilarating. "Love is not always easy," Diana continued. "It requires courage, vulnerability, and a willingness to give without expecting in return. But it is the most powerful force in existence. It heals, it connects, and it transforms." As she spoke, the colors around us began to brighten, their intensity growing until they seemed to merge into a single, radiant light. I could feel the weight of her words, the truth they carried, pressing into my very being. "You were given this glimpse, this chance, for a reason," she said. "What you do with it is up to you. But know this, Michael, you're never alone. Love will always guide you, if you choose to follow it." Her hand tightened slightly around mine, and I felt a surge of energy, as if her strength and courage were being poured into me. The light around us grew blinding, and for a moment, I felt as though I was dissolving into it, becoming one with its warmth and peace. And then, just as suddenly, it all began to fade. As the radiant light began to fade, I found myself standing once more in the golden expanse where I had first encountered Diana. The warmth of the space still enveloped me, but now it carried a sense of urgency, a gentle nudge that it was time to move forward. Diana stood before me, her presence as steady as the mountains and as soft as a sunrise. Her eyes, deep and knowing, locked with mine. I could feel the weight of everything she had shown me. The moments of love I had overlooked, the purpose I had yet to embrace, the lives waiting to be touched by something as simple yet profound as kindness. "There is one more thing you need to see," she said, her voice calm but resolute. I nodded, trusting her completely now. The hesitation and fear that had gripped me earlier had been replaced by a quiet determination. Whatever lay ahead, I was ready to face it. She gestured to the space around us, and as I followed her gaze, the golden light began to shift once more. This time, the change was more gradual, like the slow bloom of dawn. The expanse transformed into something that resembled Earth, but it wasn't quite the same. The colors were richer, the air seemed to hum with life, and the very ground beneath my feet felt alive, pulsing faintly as if it had its own heartbeat. In the distance, I saw a garden, a place so breathtakingly beautiful that it took me a moment to realize I was holding my breath. Trees stretched toward the heavens, their leaves shimmering with hues of emerald and gold. Flowers bloomed in every color imaginable, their petals glowing softly as though lit from within. A gentle breeze carried a fragrance that seemed to awaken something deep within me, a memory, perhaps, of a home I had long forgotten. "This is a reflection of eternity," Diana said, her voice pulling me from my reverie. "It is a glimpse of what lies beyond, a reminder of what we are all connected to." As I stepped closer to the garden, I noticed figures moving among the trees. They weren't shadowy or indistinct like before. They were vibrant, their forms glowing with the same light that surrounded everything here. Some were sitting quietly, their expression serene, while others seemed to be tending to the garden, their hands moving with care and intention. One figure turned toward me, and as our eyes met, a wave of recognition washed over me. It was someone I had known long ago, someone whose memory I had buried beneath the weight of time. Tears filled my eyes as I realized who they were, and in that moment, the distance of years and loss melted away. "They are here to remind you," Diana said softly, standing beside me now. "Love is never lost. It transcends time, space, and even death. It is eternal." Her words resonated deeply, and as I looked around the garden, I felt a profound sense of connection to the people here, to the world I had left behind, and to something far greater than myself. "This is what awaits all who choose love," Diana continued. "It is not an escape from life, but a fulfillment of it. And it is not meant to be kept hidden. It is meant to be shared." I turned to her, my heart full of gratitude and awe. "How do I bring this back with me?" I asked. "You already have," she said, her smile warm and encouraging. "It is within you, Michael. All you need to do is live it." The garden began to fade, the colors softening into the golden light once more. Diana's presence remained steady, her gaze filled with an unspoken assurance that I could carry this message forward. As the light enveloped us, I felt a gentle tug, pulling me back toward the world I had come from. But this time, I wasn't afraid. I was ready. Thank you for being part of this journey with me. If this story has inspired you, consider joining our community by subscribing to the channel and leaving a like. Together, we can continue exploring these extraordinary experiences and the lessons they hold. The pull back to my earthly life grew stronger, and with it came a flood of emotions, gratitude, longing, and an unshakable sense of purpose. Diana stood before me one last time, her presence radiant and unwavering. The golden light around us seemed to intensify, as though the space itself was preparing me for the journey ahead. "You have seen what you needed to see," she said, her voice steady but filled with warmth. "Now, it is time for you to go back. Your life, your choices, your love, they are the bridge between this place and the world you come from." I swallowed hard, not wanting to leave the peace and clarity I had found here. "What if I forget?" I asked, my voice breaking. "What if I return to the way I was before?" She smiled, a serene expression that seemed to carry the weight of eternity. "You won't forget," she said, "because love cannot be undone. It will guide you, just as it brought you here." Her words settled in my heart like a promise. She reached out, placing her hand gently over mine. In that touch, I felt an energy so profound that it seemed to merge with my very soul. It wasn't just a blessing, it was a transfer of strength, a reminder that I wasn't alone. "Go, Michael," Diana said, her gaze unwavering. Live fully, love deeply, and remember, every moment is an opportunity to choose what truly matters. The light around me grew blinding, and for a moment, I felt as though I was dissolving into its warmth. My senses blurred, and then, as suddenly as it had begun, the light was gone. I opened my eyes to the sterile white of a hospital room. The faint beeping of monitors filled the air, a sharp contrast to the stillness I had just left behind. My body felt heavy, tethered once again to the physical world, but my spirit felt lighter than it ever had. Jessica was sitting by my side, her eyes red from crying, yet filled with relief as they met mine. "You're awake," she whispered, her voice trembling. I nodded, my throat dry, but my heart full. "I'm here," I said, the words carrying a depth I couldn't yet explain. Over the following days, I began to share bits of my experience. Not all at once, but in moments that felt right. Each time I spoke of the light, the garden, or Diana's words, I saw something shift in those who listened. It wasn't just curiosity. It was a spark, a recognition of something they too had been longing for. Life didn't magically become easier after that day, but it became fuller. Every interaction, every decision carried the weight of purpose. I began to notice the small moments. The laughter of my children, the warmth of Jessica's hand in mine, the kindness of a stranger. These were the treasures Diana had spoken of, the fragments of eternity woven into the fabric of everyday life. As I sit here now, reflecting on the journey that brought me back, I feel an overwhelming sense of gratitude, not just for the experience, but for the chance to share it. My story is not just mine. It is a reminder of the light that exists in all of us, waiting to be shared. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If this story has inspired or moved you, please consider becoming part of our community by subscribing to the channel and leaving a like. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that uplift and transform. And don't stop here. There's so much more to discover. Click on the next video appearing on your screen now. It holds a revelation that could change your life forever. See you there?